Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 330 of the All Dolphins podcast on this Saturday, August 11th, 2024, the day after the Miami Dolphins 20-13 victory against the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to recap it again. Did a live show on Friday night. And let me start off by apologizing for the bad audio quality. I blame it on a poor internet connection, which actually is very rare. My internet usually is very, very good. For some reason, last night it was wonky, and they came across like that. So I want to try to be a little bit more understandable today, and certainly that would apply as well to my guest host, the inimitable Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. How are you, Perk?
I like that, man. Unimitable, venerable, foolish, all that kind of stuff. It all applies.
Venerable sounds old, though. That's why
that applies.
I'm older than you, so I can't use it. Because if you're venerable, what am I? Relic?
Sage.
Whoa. Okay. We're going to be discussing everything that happened yesterday, along with some issues that have arisen as a result of what we saw, including the quarterback position, the backup spot specifically, and the offensive line, the never-ending issues with the offensive line. So let me start with this. Chris Perkins, by the way, you find his work at sunsentinel.com. You also have the Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. You want to tell the good folks when the next episode is?
It is going to be Friday, August 16th, me and David Feronas, and then we might have another person join us, a wise columnist from the Sun Sentinel, but we will wait and see.
Okay. No spoilers here.
None. You'll never figure it out.
Yeah, there you go, right? If you know, you know. So I guess my first question to you, Mr. Perkins, is what was your biggest takeaway from this game? Other than the fact that it was long, it was boring, and there were three stupid instant replays. By the way, there was a comment in the live section that I want to address real quickly here from the live show yesterday, and I apologize, Perk, I didn't mean to make you wait. Number one, I spent maybe a minute out of a 48-minute live show venting about instant replay. That's number one. Number two, sorry, my podcast. Number three, clearly you don't have to listen to it, the person who was complaining about it, and clearly you didn't, because you suggested that I was saying that instant replay kills momentum for a team or the other. No. Instant replay kills momentum in terms of the flow of the game for the viewing experience. Okay, the game goes along, and then you hit pause, and it's a long time to wait. That's what I meant. So anyway, that's my response. So, Perk, biggest takeaway from the game last night?
My biggest takeaway is that was a pretty good performance by the draft class. Look, I thought we know that the edge rushers, Chop Robinson, the first-round pick, Mo Kamara, the fifth-round pick, did not play. Taj Washington is on reserve injured. But the dudes who were drafted and played, Patrick Paul at left tackle, nice work. Jalen Wright at running back, nice work. Malik Washington at receiver, nice work. Patrick McMorris at safety, nice work. McMorris told me he got a game ball. He tied for the team lead with in tackles with Curtis Bolton at 8 apiece. So nice job by those rookie draftees. My hat is off to them. That's a nice debut.
Here's a good question here. If we were to rank, and again, I completely agree with you. We're both in agreement. All four of them performed well.
Yep.
Based on position, based on production, let's have fun and rank them 1 through 4 from the game last night. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll go first. I thought Patrick Paul was a clear number one. Boy, Jalen Wright was really productive. But so were Malik, and McMorris got a game ball. I'm going to say, because of the importance and the way that the game is nowadays, I'm going to give number 2 to Jalen Wright, a close number 3 to Malik Washington, again, because of the game and this team in particular, the way that they need receivers and rely on receivers and speed and quickness. And then number 4, Patrick McMorris. But at number 4, Patrick McMorris probably gets a solid B, maybe a B+. I mean, all of those guys were really good last night.
Oh, I agree. I go Patrick Paul number 1. I love watching some of those second-level blocks.
Yes.
And there was one in particular where he's pushing the dude like 15 yards down the field, even after the play is kind of over, finishing the block. Yes. That was really good. And I didn't detect any mental mistakes from him. Didn't see him get beat on the pass rush. I thought he He was excellent. And then for the other three, it's like flip a coin.
Right.
Because I really like McMorris's game. Malik Washington. I'm going to make another point after this with Malik Washington. The only knock in terms of receptions, he didn't do a whole lot. I mean, the most of his damage had a very nice 18-yard punt return, and he had the 21-yard gain on the end around. He did muff his first punt, but after that, he was very good on punt returns. And then Jalen Wright, the thing that struck me about Jalen Wright, and I mentioned this in the snap count observations I did on Miami Dolphins on SI at si.com/NFL/Dolphins. Would you be surprised to know he only played 22 snaps on offense?
I found that out on si.com. Quite honestly, I really did. Honestly, I did.
But it was like, because when I saw it, it was like, man, it felt like he was on the field the whole game, because they certainly fed him. He had 10 carries, he had 1 target. So basically half of his snaps on the field, they called his number. But he was really, really good. I like Chris Brooks as well. So to me, I'm going to be a wimp. You ranked your 4. I'm just going to say Patrick Paul number 1, and the next 3 are 2A, 2B, and 2C. How's that for being a wimp?
You know what? I was going to do that, but I know this isn't a wimpy podcast, so I made a declaration.
See, now you just put me on the spot. Okay, fine.
Or it used to not be a wimpy podcast.
Exactly. I've gone wimpy. So number 2, yeah, I guess Jalen Wright had a touchdown and he showed the burst. I think 3. I think McMorris was really good in number 4. And this is no slight on Malik Washington. I'm going to segue into this. So mine would be Paul, Wright, McMorris, Washington.
That's good.
With the way he looked returning punts and the fact that he was used to return kickoffs and there wasn't a whole lot of consequence there, is it possible, because we've said all along Dolphins are going to keep six wide receivers and they're all set. Is it possible that Malik Washington, the way he was used and the way he looked returning punts, could mean trouble for Braxton Berrios' once assumed roster spot?
It's possible, Poop, but let's keep things in perspective. It was a good opening night for the rookies, but let's face it, they were going up against fellow backups in the league. So next joint practice, next game, let's see if they get reps with the bigger boys. I don't expect they're going to get reps with the big boys just yet, especially in the case of Patrick Paul, right? When you've got Teron Armstead as a clear starter and Kendall Lamb at that backup position now. I thought that it was clearly Kendall Lamb before last night. Patrick Paul could be the number 2 guy if he keeps going that direction. So, but yeah, I liked the way that Malik Washington played. He's got to return it, against veteran special teams players, and let's see. But you're right. I think you're thinking along the right path. And if I'm Braxton Berrios, I'm kind of on alert right now.
Yeah, and the only reason where it would become an issue is the Dolphins are going to have to make some tough cuts at certain positions, including running back, for example. Yeah. Where they have 4 halfbacks. Including Alec Ingold, they have 4 halfbacks to me who belong on the 53. No, is it 5? Sorry, it's 5.
Yep. Mostert,
Achane, Wright, Brooks, and Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yep.
Something's going to have to give. So is it possible they sacrifice a spot? And then at tight end, does Tanner Connor earn a 4th spot, assuming his injury from last night is not serious? And then what does that do, again, to other positions? Something is going to have to give. So I just raised the possibility that where once I think everybody thought Braxton Berrios was a lock, I'm not sure that's the case anymore. And understanding that it was preseason game number 1.
Let me throw this at you, Poop. If the Dolphins are still looking for interior offensive line and defensive line help, maybe Braxton Berrios and Jeff Wilson Jr. are trade possibilities. Although, I would rather wait until the cuts are made if I'm the Dolphins. But if they aren't going to have roster spots, maybe you showcase Jeff Wilson. Maybe you try to showcase Braxton Berrios, and you try to get some, and 1-for-1 trades in the NFL are not, they're not common. They're not usual. But yeah, maybe you try to get a draft pick. I don't know, but I would. Both of those guys are useful veterans whose roster spots I don't know. So try to get something for them. But I think that if you're looking at interior offensive line and interior defensive line play, you're probably better off waiting until the cuts are made as opposed to giving up assets or resources for somebody who's going to be a rotational player at best. But the original point of making tough decisions, yeah, Braxton Berrios and Jeff Wilson, y'all better fight harder.
Not to say that they haven't been fighting hard, but
No.
we catch your drift.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the biggest topic seemingly every summer is the offensive line.
Yep.
And not good that Keon Smith, who started at left guard, went down with an injury. And if you see the replay, basically an Atlanta pass rusher who falls into his knee from the side, and then he bent in a way it's not supposed to bend. That didn't look good. It could turn out to be minor. We don't know. And then, of course, the news from Mike McDaniel after the game where he's talking about Aaron Brewer being not day-to-day, but week-to-week, where I hear that and immediately maybe I'm an alarmist by nature, but I'm thinking, well, week-to-week, the regular season opener is 4 weeks from Sunday.
Yep.
So now what does that mean? I think we all agree probably the plan is going to be Liam Eichenberg come on back down to center, even though Liam told the reporters he prefers playing guard, but again, sucks to be you. You're not playing guard, apparently. But now they need a new starting right guard. Having said that, Jack Driscoll looked pretty good Friday night, again, with the caveat that it was against backups and not starters. So how panicked should Dolphin fans be about the offensive line?
I think the only reason for concern is the center position. I keep saying this, the two guard positions. Look, you can't have a Pro Bowl player at all 22 starting positions. And if I were to list the starting positions in order of importance, left guard would be 21, right guard would be 22. I'm sorry, that's just how I view it. So when I'm considering offensive line, get me a good center, get me two good tackles, and we'll go from there. I've got a good skeleton right there. And if I can find two good guards, I will. By the way, Poop, one story that I kind of need to do and wanted to do is the Dolphins we talk about guards. How come all their guards are converted tackles? Liam Eichenberg and Robert Hunt. And it seems like they take a lot of these 6'5", 6'6", long-armed guys whose body doesn't fit the traditional guard mold, and you're asking them to block a lot of these squatty guys like Christian Wilkins, guys who are getting leverage on them. I don't know that that's a factor, but I did ask Jack Driscoll about that during the shortly after he was acquired. And he was saying, it's kind of a trend of the league as the league becomes more pass heavy. These guys in the interior have pass blocking skills, so it's not a big deal like it used to be where, you ran all the time. But yeah, the Dolphins, they kind of seem to, I don't know if it's fair to say they don't draft guards that much. They draft offensive linemen and try to turn them into guards. But having said that, I'm not that concerned about the guard situation. Lester Cotton and Robert Jones are capable. Sean Harlow and Jack Driscoll, they could probably do the job. You're not going to produce a Pro Bowl candidate. And the player might be a iffy NFL level starter, but you just need to be good enough there.
No, this is a question I get a lot whenever I do a mailbag or I'm on Twitter is like, which free agents are out there? We're August 11th or August 10th. They're not really great options out there. Those who are out there, generally speaking, because the team that they were with last year didn't want them anymore. The Dolphins did work out Scott Quessenberry and Justin McCray last week, I think it was. They're not high-profile guys. I know the idea of trading for James Daniels, starting guard for the Steelers, who started with the Chicago Bears, has come up. But in all of those are great, except the other team's got to want to make a trade as well. And I have a lot of connections in Pittsburgh, and I'm told not happening. They're not trading him. So, again, it's all fine and dandy to want something to happen. Of course, if it turns around, I'm sure everybody's going to be like, you were wrong. But The plan for now is told that the Steelers have no intention of trading James Daniels. So quality offensive linemen just don't fall out of the sky. And for example, the idea that you can trade Jeff Wilson Jr. or Braxton Berrios for a quality starting guard or center for that matter, yeah, sounds great, but it's not terribly realistic.
No.
Yeah. No, and yeah, it's not the end of the world, but it's a little problematic in that, again, the offensive line, as well as everything else around it, wasn't good enough down the stretch against quality teams. And I think I would have, heading into the season, I would have a lot more confidence that the skill position players can cross that obstacle hurdle that's been in the way than the offensive line.
Right.
So,
let me say this, Poop. Interior offensive line will not be in the top 10 reasons that this team does not win the AFC, does not win a playoff game, does not get a home playoff game. It won't be in the top 10. Okay, so really, when you're talking about this team beating good teams, you need to get better production out of your star players and your head coach. Go back and look at the play calling. Look at how many times you've gone away from the run in big games. Look at how many times you've had systematic errors in big games, getting the play down in time. Tua last year, 1-6 against playoff teams. The Dolphins, Tua, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Tyreek Hill dropping passes. Raheem Mostert, only 1 rushing touchdown against a playoff team. Look at the sack totals for Chubb and Phillips. Like, your best players have to do it, not the interior offensive line. They aren't going to get you a home playoff game. Your best players have to do this. They have to pick it up, including Mike McDaniel.
Except this is where I would say that the better the offensive line, the more it facilitates what your frontline players, your skill position players can do. And yeah, I would disagree with the interior of the offensive line. To me, would be a top 10 reason why the Dolphins would not, if they failed, that they would not accomplish their goals. Because I think, again, the better they protect, the more run blocking holes they open, the more efficient the offense is going to be, the less pressure there is on Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and all those guys. So,
let me say this, Poop. But we've still got to see Mike McDaniel call the run, right? And like the way that they play, the interior offensive line isn't that important. You're getting off these quick passes. You're running outside zone run plays. You're not pounding the ball on 3rd and 1 up the middle. Like, you're not doing that. And so before I talk about the need for offensive line play, I want to see Mike McDaniel emphasize interior offensive line. When we talk about the Dolphins being bullies, it's not just getting out there and being physical and throwing teams around. You've got to set a mentality, Mike McDaniel. You've got to call an inside run on 3rd and 1 instead of jet sweeps and all this cute stuff. The interior offensive line, you don't play a game where that's a high priority. Like, you're not pounding the ball against anybody, even in 3rd and short.
Except this is where I'm going to play devil's advocate. And we have a chicken and egg situation going on here. The way I see it is it possible the reason Mike McDaniel goes to like quick throws, quick hitches, or jet sweeps or whatever on 3rd and 1 instead of pounding the ball down the middle is because he doesn't trust his offensive line to get the job done. And again, something has to come first. Either he has to show the confidence that they can do it, then they have to do it, and then it becomes a ripple effect. But right now what we've seen is, yes, he defers to the quick throws on 3rd and 1, again, because I think that's what he feels most confidence is going to get the job done. Let's move on to the guys who throw the ball.
Yeah.
And I hate to borrow a line from our Dolphin beat writer peer and former co-host of the All Dolphins podcast, but let's just say the passing game was booty cheeks. I think that's completely fair. And Skyler wasn't good. Mike White might have been even worse and looked indecisive. But this is where I'm going to point out that a lot of his snaps were with Kyrique McGowan. And if you're going, who, no offense to Kyrique, but he's a young player who's not established in the NFL, who wasn't on the roster in training camp. And then it was Willie Snead IV, again, who has a name, but who's also got 4 catches the past 2 seasons combined and has about that many drops since he joined the Dolphins 2 weeks ago. And then there's another one I'm forgetting. So he wasn't playing with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, or even or Malik Washington and River Craycraft, which Skylar got the chance to do in the first half. So when Mike White is going pat, I can't find anybody. Yeah, part of it may be him not seeing the field quickly enough. It also could be the receivers aren't getting open.
2 things on that, Poop. Number one, Mike McDaniel did tell us that he wants to get both quarterbacks playing with the same personnel. And, so that's going to take a couple of games, right? Last night, as you say, Skylar got the better personnel. Next appearance, we would think Mike White gets the better personnel. That's number one. Number two, in talking to Mike White in the locker room after the game, he had an interesting perspective that takes what you say into account, because he was saying, I was trying to keep everybody's spirits up, that, somebody has to be positive and tell them, hey, guys, let's go. He was saying that these guys don't have a lot of experience. And he didn't, Mike White is very classy, very intelligent. He's a veteran. He's not going to say, correct, I'm out there with guys who don't have experience. but he was kind of alluding to that. And he was saying that he thought that he did a pretty good job and did what he could for the offense. And at the time, I was kind of like, well, Mike White is smart. What the hell is he talking about? But after you consider that, and after I read SI.com, the Dolphins, and I considered, and I was like, Poop is right, Mike White is right, and so we need to kind of step back. And I know that we always want to make these instant knee-jerk reactions, stock up, stock down, which I do every day from practice, but you do kind of have to sit back and take a bigger picture view of it, and I thought you did a good job of that, Poop, and I think Mike White has the right idea, so I'm going to give him – I have the ultimate respect for Mike White. I like him and I respect him as a player. So let's give him another shot with better personnel, and then we can make a more accurate judgment. Yeah,
and this is the part I'm going to step in it, but not because not because I haven't done it before. But for example, if you guys would have expected Tua to play with the same players that Mike White played with in the second half and throw for like 150 yards with that group, yeah, good luck. So, again, no, he didn't look good, and his numbers are putrid, 4 for 14, passer rating 39.6. But, again, let's keep perspective. I still maintain Mike White's still the number 2 quarterback, because I think there's more of a trust factor there, because he's done it in games a lot more than Skylar Thompson has. What's happening right now is the way those two are performing, which is not great. I think by the day it diminishes the idea the Dolphins are going to keep 3 quarterbacks on the 53, because remember the new rule – if you want to use a guy as your emergency third quarterback, he does not have to be on the 53 this year, as was the case last year, which was perhaps part of the reason the Dolphins kept Skylar Thompson as the third.
If they try to sneak one of these guys on the practice squad, they're getting picked up. Neither of them is clearing waivers. Would you agree with that?
No. We really? Sure about that? Yeah, we sure about that?
Yeah, because Skylar has played in games, and that's better than some slappy who hasn't played, taken a snap in 2 years or whatever. I think he would get picked up. I might be wrong, Poop, but I think he would get picked up. That's the first time ever.
Wrong.
I think it would be hard. I think it would be hard to get either of them through, but we'll see. We'll see what they do.
I don't know. Which brings us to the other quarterback that's been mentioned, who's still sitting out there, who's the only one. I love your reaction, Perk. Right. Who's the only one with any kind of name among the quarterbacks who are still available. I am talking, of course, about former Dolphin first-round pick, 7-year starter, NFL passer rating leader in 2019, I want to say, with the Tennessee Titans, our good friend, the one and only Ryan Tannehill. And I wrote a column, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, when somebody first threw out the idea of, why are the Dolphins considering him? And my column was basically because they shouldn't. Perk, you obviously agree, judging by your reaction, right?
I think that, look, I liked Ryan Tannehill. I respected Ryan Tannehill. I thought that they took the wrong approach with Ryan Tannehill, that you needed to be a run game defense team. He got a run game in Tennessee, and he goes to the AFC Championship. bringing Tannehill back here now, I think would stir up a lot of bad memories, bad emotion, bad voodoo for Dolphins fans. You've got a great vibe around this team, very positive. You bring Tannehill in, and you're bringing up memories of Philbin and Gase and 7-9 and 8-8 and mediocrity and pass failures. And no fault to Ryan Tannehill, but I just think that the whole kind of it would just suck a lot of air out of the room because you're reverting to an era that you're trying to forget in Dolphins football.
And there are two other points that I think that need to be made. Is number one, would he want to come in to be a backup at a place where he once was a starter? That's number one. Number two, exactly how much tweaking of the offensive scheme would have to be done when everything right now is built on getting the ball quickly, quick decisions, rhythm passing, which ain't Ryan Tannehill's forte. All right?
Hey,
am I right?
You're right. You're right. And let me give Dolphins fans a very scary thing about Ryan Tannehill, and something that I respect about Tannehill. He wasn't brought to the Dolphins originally to be the starter, right? David Garrard was going to be the starter, and then Garrard hurts his knee. Tannehill is the starter. He goes to Tennessee. He wasn't brought there to be the starter. Marcus Mariota was the starter. Mariota gets hurt. Tannehill becomes the starter. Do you want to bring him here? Do I need to finish that thought? Do I need to finish the sentence? Let's not tempt fate here, right?
What is he put like a voodoo hex on them?
That's the man's trend. That congrats to him. He gets that starting position and he doesn't let it go. But are you wanting to do that, Dolphins? Do you want to even open that door?
That's a very, very good point. Yeah, I don't see it. And again, the way the Dolphin offense is structured with everything working on timing, it makes a difference who you play with. And
yes,
again, Mike White's body of work, while it's not Patrick Mahomes, like to me, it's solid enough. And I still think he's going to be the number 2 guy. Dolphins obviously don't want anything to happen to Tua. Hopefully he stays healthy for 17 games again in 2024 as he did in 2023. And it's going to be incumbent upon him to be smart again, even with his newfound mobility, that when the play breaks down and he extends it, which he should do, but don't put yourself in harm's way for no reason. What he did best last year in terms of preserving his health wasn't put on weight, wasn't jiu-jitsu. It was he made smarter decisions of when to give up the play, when to go down and take the sack. And that to me, he didn't take any kind of hits. And this is where, I poo-poo the jiu-jitsu a lot. He didn't take any hits that were anywhere near what he took in 2022. And that was the biggest reason. And he needs to stay with it. And the Dolphin coaches, Darrell Bevel, Mike McDaniel, Frank Smith, need to pound on Tua constantly. Be smart, be smart, be smart.
Right. And the other part of that, Poop, is holding on to the ball was a common factor in those hurtful hits a couple of years ago. So Tua, I know you've got that newfound mobility / agility, but don't hold the ball. Don't try to get into a trend of extending plays because that's not who you are. That's not your strength.
Agreed. 2 other quick topics before we get out of here. Number 1, kickoff rule. Like it, dislike it, don't care either way.
Inconclusive. I still do think that there's a lot of exciting possibilities there. David Ferrone has brought up a good point on the Dolphins Deep Dive podcast that we do, just saying that there's going to be such pressure on special teams coordinators and such a race to see who can find an edge, in this kickoff thing. It's just going to be hair on fire. And, you're going to see some reputations built over the next half season, the next 2 seasons, if you can figure out how to master this thing. The kickoff return still appears to me to be a thing of 2 good cuts, and there's no safeties back there. I think there's less depth in kickoff return defense than there used to be. It seems like everybody is right there. And once you break through to that second level, you don't even have to put a move on the kicker like you used to. It looks like there's a whole lot of space. So, yeah, the ones, and it seems like kind of like a Dolphins outside zone run play, right? Where if you find the crease, you can kind of stretch it, and you find that cutback lane, you can be gone. So inconclusive, but I think the possibilities are great for this being an exciting play.
I agree. As of now, I don't think there's been anything exciting around the league. The Dolphins' starting average drive point was 25.9 yards, which basically is touchback city. And Atlanta's was at 20-something, but they also had I think they had 1 or 2 penalties on kickoff returns, which affects the average start. So not a whole lot. I know the idea has been thrown out there. I may have brought it up of using Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's speed back there. My thought is the Dolphins do that. I can easily see an opposing special teams coordinator telling his kicker, drill that thing into the end zone. We'll let him have the ball at the 30, not the end of the world. I don't want Tyreek beating me. This is where maybe, like I mentioned Malik Washington, maybe Jalen Wright could be used well in that spot. Yes. Get somebody who's not a full-time player who has the speed to break one if he gets a crease. That would be my idea. And then I'd like to see the Dolphins. We saw Jason Sanders kick one through the back of the end zone, landed beyond the end zone. This is what's going to happen late in games if you're protecting a lead. Let the other team start at the 30. Last thing you want is a long kickoff return. Last topic of conversation, and I bring it up because I like to poke the bear, and he is such a polarizing player in the Dolphin media room. I'm talking, of course, about the one, the only, Ethan Bonner. Where do you stand on Ethan Bonner, his role on the team, the security of his roster spot, his ceiling for 2024, all of that?
Well, I'll say this overall. I'm not so sure about the backup cornerbacks and the backup wide receivers. Now, but we're talking about cornerbacks. Nobody has really stood out to me. I thought Ethan Bonner probably lost a little bit of ground last night. I saw some receivers getting behind him. Jason Maitre, is that what Jordan Fuller told us? Yes. I thought he made a couple of plays. I thought Isaiah Johnson made a couple of plays, but I don't think that, to me, I have to go back and watch the game again, but to me, none of those backup cornerbacks really stood out. If we're talking, and I brought up backup receivers, Malik Washington stood out and took advantage of his opportunity. I didn't really notice a corner taking advantage of his opportunity in that fashion last night. So it's all kind of up in the air still with me.
Fair. In his defense, in Ethan Bonner's defense, on the long reception he gave up at the line of scrimmage, it looked like he got yanked by the Hill. That wasn't called. But the play before that, he got beat pretty easily, maybe 15 yards down the field, and Michael Penix threw an errant pass that forces receivers to catch it out of bounds. So I think there's a decent ceiling with Ethan Bonner. He's a tough guy. He's got good size, and he can run.
Yep.
I think he's on the 53. I think Cam Smith's a problem in that he's almost uncuttable because he's a second-round pick from a year ago. And he's going to take up a roster spot. You can't give up on him just yet.
Yep.
But I like Isaiah Johnson. I like Jason Maitre, the 2 rookie free agents. Storm Duck's not far behind. I think those are NFL caliber cornerbacks. But obviously not all 3 of them are going to make the roster. I don't know if any one of them are going to make the roster, but I think there's something there. So
can I bring up 2 more names?
Go ahead.
And you can go first on both of them. Jason Sanders and Quentin Bell, especially the 2 joint practices and last night. I know it was only 15 snaps, but your thoughts on both of them?
I was looking for more from Quentin Bell, if I'm going to be honest.
Yep.
I didn't see the same dominating guy as I've seen in the practices. Very interesting thing about Quentin Bell, as I wrote in my snap count observations, 15 snaps on defense, 25 on special teams, which kind of leads me to believe they want to see what he can do on special teams. And I think it bodes well for his roster chances because, no, I don't think he's a lock despite the fact that everybody's writing his story because it's such a great story. Mm-hmm. And then Jason Sanders, love seeing him make the 58-yard field goal. The second one was bad. But the problem with kickers doesn't mean crap until the regular season starts, and then it comes. And my bottom line with Jason Sanders, he basically won the Dallas game last year, kicked the Dolphins into the playoffs, which he did the previous year against the Jets when he had like a subpar season.
Yep, I agree. I'm not worried about Jason Sanders. I liked seeing the 58-yarder that he made. Didn't like the one that he missed because it was such an ugly miss. And yes, I agree totally on Quentin Bell that in the joint practices and in the game, we didn't really see that presence. And so it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and here's the thing: if you're looking, we'll close it out with this. If you look at, if you look at the projection of the positions, if you're looking at the edge defender position, you got Jalen Phillips, who I think you and I both assume will be ready for week 1.
Yep.
You got Emmanuel Ogbah, who's looked good. You got Quentin Bell. You got Cam Brown, who I think is a core special teams guy who also has flashed a little bit as an edge. And then you got the 2 draft picks, Chop Robinson and Mo Kamara. They're not keeping 6 edge defenders.
No.
So something's going to have to give. Am I right or am I right?
Yeah. I initially I could see maybe Quentin Bell and Mo Kamara on practice squad, but we'll see. I shouldn't say Quentin Bell. I should say Mo Kamara. Quentin, I'm taking the last week too much into consideration and his past too much into consideration. But I think, Quentin Bell and Mo Kamara are going to be around in some form or fashion. But, yeah, I would think, Jalen Phillips, Emmanuel Ogbah, Chop Robinson, they're going to be definitely in your 3-man rotation for the opener. Or in your rotation for the opener, not a 3-man rotation.
Yeah, and who would have thought this about Ogbah? I'm going to have to disagree with you again before we leave. I don't know that Mo Kamara sticks on the practice squad if you expose him to waivers. I think there's definitely something there with the dude. I think he gets picked up if you. That's true. Yeah. You're trying to slide him through. So, on that note, where I was right and Perk was wrong. That's just 2 hours. I had to do it. I kid. Then remember, we only kid the ones we love. And my friend, I appreciate you always.
Yep.
Hope you enjoyed this podcast, gang. Like, subscribe, download, all those good stuff. And that's going to do it for today. Until we meet again. And thanks for everyone.